Hello everyone, I'm Tony and we're about to roll a short arm cast. Here's a few things you would need: some gloves, stockinette cut to the length of the patient's arm or extremity, a smaller piece of stockinette to cover the thumb. You'll also need some cotton, whether you're using 2-inch or 3-inch, it is your preference. The fiberglass, you can use 2 or 3-inch, it is your preference again. A trusty pair of sharp scissors, I prefer these. A piece of foam, if you have it, or moleskin to cover up the bony prominence. And fleece liner is to help control the edges. Now let's put this cast on. First we're going to start with applying the stockinette to the thumb, and at this point you want to make sure that the patient's in proper position. You're communicating with them and letting them know what you're doing, especially if this is their first time. You want to be mindful of deviation. On the deviation usually comes in the short arm cast, so you want to keep mind of that while trying to control the patient's arm while rolling the cast. When applying the stockinette, you can pre-cut the hole for the thumb. I personally prefer to cut the hole afterwards due to previous experiences. Then you get your scissors, clean up any little loose strings, make sure it's all neat and smooth and flush. And then you're gonna move on. You're gonna grab the cotton. I like to start at the wrist and work my way up to the palm of the hand through the web space of the thumb. Okay, remember, do not over pad. Over padding is comfortable, but it will make for a loose cast at some point. Here, as you go down the forearm, you want to try to maintain a horizontal line with your roll and stay about 50-50 when it comes to the cotton, and that's to eliminate shadows and to make sure you have even padding down the length of the cast. Once you have had your cotton applied, you get your first roll. Oh, I forgot about this. This is just extra padding. This is a chevron just to make it a little more comfortable for the patient's thumb, especially if they're using that hand to write or do anything with it. You don't want to have a patient complaining about rough or sharp edges within the cast, because that will cause you to have to redo the cast. So always keep that in mind. Once you get your initial layer of your fiberglass, you're going to go in and you're basically going to follow the same path that you followed with the cotton. Only difference is you want to be mindful of the palmar crease in the hand when it comes to the fiberglass, because we do not want the fiberglass to encroach upon the palmar crease of the hand unless instructed or advised by the physician ordering this said cast. Rule of thumb, if it's functional, it shouldn't be locked down in the cast. But again, you are just an orthopedic technician and you are going to roll to the specifics of that said physician ordering that cast. As you go down the thumb, you're following the same path as you did with the cotton. You want to get all the way down to the antecubical space, the crease of the elbow, about 2 fingers. And once you get to that point, you bring your cast or your fiberglass back up the forearm. You want to try to get all the edges, make them as smooth as possible and clean as possible. And as you're doing that, you can work on rubbing it in, working on your interosseous mold. All right. I myself like to put a little more cotton at the very edge of the cast, and that's just to protect the patient's bicep or give them a sense of comfort, because some patients, for whatever reason, would like to put their thumb on their shoulders. In turn, if a person is trying to put their thumb on their shoulders, that cast is going to run into their bicep. In turn, it's going to be a problem. I tuck down, expose the thumb so it is functional and in use, able to use the thumb. Cut a small little hole in the remainder of your stockinette, and that's just so you can tuck in the distal end of your cast. Make sure you hold and control the patient so you're not jostling them all over the place. Your patient is possibly hurt. They don't need to be jostled any more than needed. As you can see, just cleaning up the edges, making things clean, because you got to remember you are going to use a cast saw at some point and have to take this cast off this person. Cast saws do not cut well through soft material. Primarily cut great with fiberglass, but when using stockinette, be mindful of where it's laying at, because if you have too much stockinette underneath the final layer of the cast, that cast may be a little bit harder for you to take off. As you're dressing your edges and you get into the final roll, the money roll is what we call it, you put a few more squeezes on the cast, clean up any loose ends, any wrinkles, make sure your palmar crease is exposed. All right, and now we're going to come in with the money roll, which we like to call it as an orthopedic technician, or this is the final roll of the cast, the color roll, the part that everyone looks forward to. If it's the patient's first time rolling, there's a strong chance when you start that cast, they're going to ask you, where's the color? You're going to tell them it's coming. I promise. If your cast is dry enough, it is okay to start at the proximal end of the cast and work your way up distal. I repeat, do not, when you are starting the cast, I repeat, do not start a new cast from the proximal end towards the distal end. In simple terms, do not start the cast at the elbow and roll it up towards the fingers. Circulation doesn't work in that manner. Blood flows towards the heart, not the other way. If you're rolling in that manner, I am not here to correct you, but I promise you that is not a good way to roll a cast on any person. And again, we take this red, the final roll, try to make it smooth, it's pretty. This is what everybody's going to talk about. This is what your fans are going to see. And you see, I just kind of use my fingers to kind of guide my roll, get it to lay it where I want. You need to be in control of your fiberglass at all times. Once you finish, you feel like you got it enough and it's thick enough, try to finish your final cut of your final piece of fiberglass you're cutting on the outside or the lateral aspect of the patient, and that just so it doesn't dig in to them, especially when they're sleeping. You want to try to rub it down as smooth as possible. I myself, when I'm rubbing the cast, I am rubbing and molding while maintaining control of that said patient's arm or any body part. I want to make it as smooth as possible. It should almost shine like glass once you're done. Get a final mold, and depending on the temperature of water you're using, you can get that mold as you finish. If you rewind it about a second or two, I did check the anacubical space, make sure I was about 2 fingers length in between. And now we're just going to get the final pieces to the cast, the fleece liner that I forgot to add. And one rule of thumb also as a cast technician, make sure you have all your supplies with you, everything that you would possibly need to roll that said cast. One thing you do not want to do is break contact with your patients. Again, sometimes these are the first time this patient has ever been injured, so they're a little apprehensive. So as a cast technician or orthopedic technician, you want to try to make them feel as comfortable as possible. And I've learned over the years, maintaining visual and verbal contact with the patient helps a lot. This fleece liner is just more a cosmetic piece that we add on to the edges of the fiberglass, especially around the thumb area. Due to fiberglass, it becomes very sharp once it dries. One more final rub, I'm sorry. checking for the creases, make sure we got everything lined up, everything is good. Ask the patient, are they happy? They are. And we're out. That's a short arm.